just disappear here. I could just pick up and go. Now my life is so static, nothing ever seems to change. I've only got time now to have it. I've only got my same old habits. Never claim to have enough. Hit the road to find it all. I've only got one life to burn. I've only got one wheel to turn. Soon I'll be gone. I'll be gone. I'll be gone. I'll be gone. Remember what tomorrow feels like as the city shadow slips away. Soon I'll be somewhere else. Soon I'll be somebody else. Now the miles are getting shorter, and it'll only be a day. I could just be a memory. I could just be a faded dream. Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough. On the road to claim it all. Only got this road to drive. Then I'll leave it all behind. I'll be gone. Soon 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 I'll be What is going on? Alright. Gotta remember to do that because it gates my mic. Hello, everyone. Been a little bit since my last stream because I've been dealing with some technical stuff that I've been trying to resolve over the past couple of days, and I think I've got a good handle on what happened. The big issue was that I had changed some settings in Streamlabs when I was first starting to get this rolling, and somehow it upped some of the quality, and now after spending 2 days fussing around with it, I'm kind of back to my original settings and what I was doing and starting that way and just keeping an eye on my processing power, because one of the things that I noticed is I upgraded recently a few instruments and things like that. And obviously these projects are pretty computer intensive for what I'm doing. So they're taking up a fair amount of processing power and all that stuff when I'm in there. So enough said there. What ended up happening because of these stream issues that I was having, though, is that I finished my song a week for last week off stream. I was working on some of it on stream. It kept dropping. It was being super annoying. So I just ended up going through and kind of fixing all that stuff on my own and getting it rolling. So I was playing that at the start and just wanted to talk about some of the changes that I made from last time. And then I posted my song for this week, but I didn't give feedback on the songs of the week for this week yet. So that's something I need to do to get things going, rolling, all that good stuff. And I'm just double checking my streaming here. Yeah, everything looks okay. So I think whatever I did got me back to normal and got me rolling. So obviously the biggest thing that The last couple of songs that I've been working on, what's been super fun about it is really working with these new drums. They were on like super duper sale, like 80% off. They're normally the Get Good drums. I ended up picking up Modern and Massive and Invasion. Those two kits are normally like $90 a piece or $100 a piece or something like that. And they ended up dropping all the way down to like 20 to 30 bucks a piece. I think Invasion was 40 because that's a bigger kit. And that one is excellent. So I just wanted to finish up what moves I made with the production. For the most part, it was mixing related stuff that I have finished here. I'm actually still playing the mix. I ended up doing my typical de facto master in a separate project, which was basically just taking this mix. One thing that I did in this one that I normally wouldn't do is I was letting the mix go past the clip threshold a little bit, especially in the loudest part, which is really, for me, I mix most of my songs around the loudest part of the song and then kind of go back and do my automation and do my work around there. So in this chorus is really where it was. Now I'm broken all the habits, seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it, I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough, on the road to claim it all. Only got this road to drive. So one of the ongoing things I was definitely having an issue with was making sure that the vocals were standing out here. So the biggest points of automation were actually, if we look at it, in from 6 to 7, which it's not a super high curve like this. So it's natively set at about -6.5. This came up to about -3, so minus about 3 dB. And then this came up just slightly more. It's like a dB more just to stand above. And then I do have a side chain running into the guitar to pull that down. I'm doing that since Neutron 3 just came out, and I've been working in that since the upgrade. I'm actually doing it with dynamic EQ rather than another compressor in there, which makes things nice. So it's nice to use that way, which is good. But it was just in the original version, they weren't standing out enough. Now I'm broken all the habits, seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it, I'm loving life and want more. So if I bypass there, you can hear the difference. I'll bypass and go through it again. Now I've broken all the habits, seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it, I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough on the road. So just to move to make it sit a little better. Then the other biggest thing that I did is I kind of ended up throwing out most of what I was doing over here with the vocal effects. I wasn't happy with how this chorus was sounding. I had a verb on here, and we can look at what it was. I had a reverb on here that was a little bit just metallic-y and had this kind of really irritating quality to it. Well, it was the combo of the delay and the reverb that was on here. So it's not the reverb that was the problem, it was the delay. So I ended up going in and pulling off, I ended up switching up, it was using something else in here and really pulling back on the feedback on it to try to get a cleaner sound for this harmony part here. And so on this, I also liked this, and again, this is something I normally wouldn't do, is let this distortion go over. Now, I still have this, the red is still pegged to about -14, so there's an offset on this, so it's not actually fully into that realm, but I liked the sound. I actually have saturation on a lot of these to add distortion anyway, but I liked the sound of the distortion when it was mixed in with the rest of the mix, because it was sounding a little bit too clean in this last chorus here. Time to love it, I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought only got this road to drive, then I'll leave it all behind. quick on the Reddit thread because, so let me pull this up real quick. So somebody had asked, and I want to cover it on this actually. So let me go into our road trip theme. I'm actually going to need this open anyway since we're going to be going through all these songs in a minute here. However, let's go ahead and... So right here, somebody was asking... They asked me this question and I gave this big long answer that I kind of wanted to break down on stream. Now, if you've watched any of the previous parts of this song, or you've watched any of the production stuff that I've done to this point, you can go in and really watch me build the layers. So I did that in part 1 and 2 of this video. So all that stuff actually did make the recording and make the streams. And is also, when it does expire here from Twitch, it also ends up on my YouTube channel. So, you know, check out the Silence Noise on YouTube and you'll see all that. But one of the things that I was asked about here is a lot of people say I have a signature vocal sound. What's interesting to me about that is obviously I think everybody has a signature vocal sound. Every vocalist sounds different to me, and there's things to like and dislike about pretty much every vocalist out there. And so for me, that's a big thing, but a lot of people ask what I do. So I kind of want to break down what I was talking about here and show it. So for me, the biggest thing that makes a vocal sound good is the layering. And the layering is really just a manual part. So I'm going to turn off this automation for a second. So if I need to make these a little bit bigger so I can solo them. So I bring them down. So you'll notice here that there's 3 different layers of vocals that are running through 3 different sets of effects. That's how I did it for this song. I tend to do it differently for every song and what I've got here. So what I did here is there's obviously 2 primary parts that are going on here. The kind of main vocal, which I would call like the mid vocal of the song. There's a low harmony that I turned down a little bit that's kind of going beneath everything, which is adding some body to the vocal. And then in the background vocals here, I ended up doing a high part. So there's a third kind of high, almost falsetto harmony that's going on. In fact, I think this might be falsetto in the chorus here. And then there's whisper lyrics that are going on. And there's another place with automation in there where I'm using automation pretty heavily on those whisper vocals to bring them up and then push them back away because they have kind of a creepy horror movie effect on it. And then I ended up in the choruses because I felt like the choruses were feeling a little bit empty. I ended up recording a 3-part harmony here, and then in the stream that was interrupting a lot, I talked about this, but this right here, I recorded a falsetto part that goes under the chorus lyrics, but I actually felt that it was too distracting, so I split these parts and I muted this, and I bring the falsetto back in once it goes into the kind of trailing out vocals that we have here. So with nothing else, for me, the layering is what I'm going for. And in fact, I could turn off all the effects on this if I wanted to show just what it sounded like. Whoops, go away, Cortana. But if I wanted to show exactly what's happening, but let's listen to just the vocals to get an idea of how they're sounding from a layering perspective. Actually, let's do this. I think if I select them all, I can turn off the effects on everything. I can. And there's a thunderstorm coming through, so you might hear thunderstorm noises in the background. It's been crazy thunderstorms. So let's just listen to the layers with kind of nothing going on. Oops.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. I've only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough.
One thing about these vocals that's a little interesting is I have a limiter on them, so they're actually pretty loud on the vocal folder, louder than I would normally have them again. But when they're running through everything, and then I have a limiter in Neutron that's pulling them down because I want them to be prominent and I wanted them to be a little bit distorted.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. I've only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough. On the road to claim it all.
So then let's go into just this and enable our effects here. So what am I doing? So because I think layering is the most important part to me. I liked the core sound of what we have there. I liked it in the mix. I liked how it was working. And then let's talk about sends. So I'm pretty much doing a similar thing. I have a template that I have developed, which I would send to anybody that's watching this that wants a mixing template or something like that for Reaper. It has a lot of my effects and stuff in there, but you can kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to do with it. I should probably develop a version of it that's using all stock plugins for any Reaper users that are out there. But here's what I'm doing in this song. And this, what I tend to have in every song is an FXL and an FXR. And generally, I'm panning them, you know, depending on the song or how busy the song is or what's going on. Sometimes they're hard panned left and right, but most of the time they're like 50% left and right, so that the effects are making the vocal feel a lot wider. And what I'm doing here, and in this song, I was working with a new delay, this Replica XT, and then I was handling the reverb separately. And so the reverb here is just a standard old, I'm using RC48 and just a standard Hall reverb that I have here. And then a trick that I picked up from the UBK Happy Funtime Hour. I am always watching and reading things about mixing and trying to learn more about mixing and mastering and that whole process, because I still consider myself to be a beginner. So a lot of my tips may be trash, who knows. But I'm just going for what works right in the songwriting process and kind of improving incrementally. But one of the things you can do after every reverb, and this was brought up on one of the Reaper streams, is you can cut off the tails. So you can cut off the resonant noise that would come up, you know, sub 100 hertz and then over 10K. You can even pull this in a little bit more to really just get a space in there. But then what you can also do with it that makes it kind of fun and narrows it as well. Like, you don't necessarily always have to do both of these, but if you bring in the saturation, that's naturally going to pull some of those tails out, so there won't be as much resonance, and then it introduces some grit and some distortion in there. So if we listen to, I'm going to go in, and I think I just have those selected, so I'm going to unsolo these. So let's listen to what we're doing with the various effects here as far as sends on the vocals themselves. And then one thing about Reaper that's important for anybody that uses another DAW, you know, Pro Tools, Ableton, Fruity Loops, whatever. Reaper has this folder structure, which I like to use, which is essentially managing your buses and your auxes. So you can do some of that in the routing mixer that you have here, but I like categorizing them into folders. So my raw vocals are always going into a subbed folder, and generally I'm trying to gain match them or get pretty close to gain matching them on the files themselves, so that the vocals coming into the raw sub are relatively similar. And then I'm running this sub out into my effects. And so again, you'll see there's an L and an R, which is basically just delay in the song, which is really thickening delay. And then there's the reverb. So let's listen to the main vocal on its own.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. I've only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough. On the road to claim it all. Only got this road to drive. Then I'll leave it all behind.
So again, creating a wider stereo field than what I'm doing right there. And then if we add the reverb in and just hear what that's doing.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. Of it, never thought I'd had enough. On the road to claim it all. I've only got this road to drive.
Back to kind of the raw. I can mute these out.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything.
Pretty straight up the middle right there. You know, they sound okay even on their own. I didn't even really have to EQ them here. I just kind of EQ'd everything together. Sometimes, depending on the song, I'll EQ the raws a little bit. I didn't really need to on this one.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. I've only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough. On the road to claim it all. Only got this road to drive. Then I'll leave it all behind. I'll be gone. Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. I've only got my time to love.
Then I got that dirty delay. I have to keep turning off Voxengo on this. So you can kind of hear the difference in what I'm doing there.
Now I've broken all the habits. Only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough. On the road to claim it all.
So that's the treatment on the main vocals. And there's going to be some more treatment that comes after the fact that I'm going to get to in a second here. So then let's listen to our harmonies real quick here. So these are the harmonies raw. I don't even have any harmonies in this right here. So these harmonies are really just applying to the verses.
Remember what tomorrow feels like. What tomorrow feels like.
See, that whisper sounds kind of funky on its own. But I was like growl whispering it into the mic, so.
Remember what tomorrow feels like.
Alright, so then if we bring all the effects back in, well, this is the easy way to do it. Alright, so.
What tomorrow feels like.
Way higher on the reverb here for what we've got. Similar effect here. I'm doing actually the same effect with a little bit more feedback here for vocal thickening on the sides. Again, just trying to create a wider stereo field with those vocals.
What tomorrow feels like.
Whoops.
Feels like. Shadow slips away. The city shadow slips away.
It's a lot heavier on the reverb.
What tomorrow feels like. What tomorrow feels like. Shadow slips away. The city shadow slips away.
So that's a very big kind of, I think I used a large hall here, saturated, or medium, so pretty big with a lot of it. So I'm really drenching that because it's more of an ambient vocal than a direct vocal.
What tomorrow feels like. As the city shadow slips away.
To sit behind a little bit, so I just turned it up so you can actually hear it in the context of the mix.
Remember what tomorrow feels like. As the city shadow slips away. Soon I'll be somewhere.
Like that vocal kind of sounds to me like it's like the 80s George Michael kind of effect. If you listen to the high vocal there, it sounds kind of like George Michael-ish to me.
What tomorrow feels like. As the city shadow slips away. As the city shadow slips away. Soon I'll be some.
6. So.
Remember what tomorrow feels like. As the city shadow slips away. Soon I'll be somewhere else.
There's that. And so let's move into the chorus vocals again, which will take us back to the loudest part of the song.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like it.
Alright, so on this was where I was having kind of my least favorite part of the song going on. I'm just double checking my stream quality. Alright, it's looking fine. Alright, so here is I basically changed my delay pretty substantially and added saturation on everything to kind of narrow it in a little bit and get rid of some of the metallic-y, but add some to keep some grit in it. So here's our chorus part that we have here. So if we just listen to the raw. And I'm actually going to jump up to 8 where it goes into the falsetto part. Alright, so I'm going to turn my effects back on since I realized I was soloing the effects without the effect on. pretty heavily to have quite a bit of distortion in them, which is what I wanted. That one I definitely used a much larger haul that I had there. Again, really trying to keep these in a huge space. And then in the there's some automation that brings the volume on these up because they're at -10 sitting behind your lead vocal here, and then they go up quite a bit louder in the next part. So put those all together, and you've got the end chorus of the song. So we'll go there.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I had enough. On the road to claim it all. Only got this road to drive. Then I'll leave it all behind. I'll be gone.
So then from there, I'm routing all my vocals and a bunch of my instruments into these two presence reverbs here. So I have one that's just all the vocal parts, and I use this as glue. So it's a kind of universal reverb that everything's running through so that it all sounds like it's in the same space. And with this, I didn't use saturation. I probably could have, but I just used that EQ trick to pull the tails off of it a little bit. And then, so basically you have this. So on that, the goal was really just to bring some unifying glue. And again, sometimes I can use saturation or compression on that if I want it to have more presence, but I was pretty okay with the individual treatment. And with this, it's not doing a whole lot. I actually pulled these down a little bit. They were probably up a little bit higher than that originally, but I pulled them down a little bit for here.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change.
And then there's one final reverb trick going on here, which is the mix presence. So routed into this, I have the Vox as well, just the main Vox here. But then I have the bass, the drums, and the guitar. So basically the music here. I didn't use the percussive synth in here because it already had quite a bit of reverb. But this is a kind of, again, room noise to tie the vocals into the instruments a little bit more. So those are, again, just adding some subtle glue that pulls everything together. You don't always have to do this with reverb. It's just something that, again, I've seen a technique used by a lot of people I watch on Twitch and YouTube and that kind of thing, which I like. And I saw it in another mix template that I downloaded at some point. And so I just like what it brings to the track.
Now I've broken all the habits. Seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it. I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I had enough. On the road to claim it all.
It's a really subtle thing that it's doing, but it's just adding some subtle fill and some subtle glue that pull things together for me.
Now I've broken all the habits.
I've picked this up from a number of places, which is just parallel compression overall. So once I'm kind of finished, or I wouldn't say finished necessarily with all the mixing, depends on where I'm at in the mix and how thick I want that mix to be. And so really my parallel compression level, so this is sometimes called the rear bus technique, the New York compression technique. I'm just using like a console style compressor, which is the solid bus compressor, which just functions kind of like a solid console compressor. What you're doing with it is you're really maxing it out so that it's super heavily compressed, and then you're feeding all of the tracks in the mix into it, and then you're bringing in a little volume, which just really increases the overall thickness of the mix in and of itself. So when you listen to it on its own, it just kind of sounds like trash. So it's really like a transient reduced version of that. So all the tracks are running into that, reducing the transient, but it has an effect of thickening up the mix when you put it back against everything else.
I've broken all the habits, seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it, I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough, on the road to claim it all. Only got this road to drive, then I'll leave it all behind.
So on this mix, I'm using quite a bit of it. I tend to feel like I keep it between like -25 and -30, but on this, I really liked the thickness it was adding to the mix as a whole.
Now I've broken all the habits, seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it, I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough, on the road to claim it all. Only got the
So from there, basically, I'll just give like a breakdown of the tools that I'm using. I had that over here in the list. So basically, the last thing I didn't mention is side chaining. So there are multiple techniques you can use for side chaining or dynamic EQ, whichever you prefer to use. Right now, I've just been playing with dynamic EQ because I just got Neutron 3 as a free upgrade thing. So that has dynamic EQ in it. So right in this song, I'm basically just linking the vocals to the guitars and the kick to the bass. Just to give more punch to the kick drum and to keep the vocals clear above the guitars. And then the volume of the guitars is coming back up in times when there aren't vocals. There's a lot of vocals in this song, and most of my songs in general, there are a lot of vocals, I notice. But in this one in particular, there are a lot of them. Sometimes I'll use a compressor for that, which kind of has the same effect, again, of just ducking things down. I know some people, and I've thought about doing this in my organization, a lot of times we'll put all of the music tracks under a parent folder that's just music and have the vocals duck all the music, which is possible to do. I tend to try to like to keep, you know, the drums going and keep the bass going as much as I can. And some tracks, that's a possibility to have a bus that's all the music that's running in there. But in this case, I didn't do that. And I actually find that I don't do that often. I just tend to mix it and have it work that way. So that's what Tomorrow feels like. So I'll play out this end part with everything in it. So, and if you weren't at the beginning, you'll hear it here.
Now I've broken all the habits, seems like everything can change. Only got my time to love it, I'm loving life and want more of it. Never thought I'd had enough, on the road to claim it all. Only got this road to drive, then I'll leave it all behind. I'll be gone, I'll be gone, I'll be gone.
All right, so that's it for this week. I'm actually, because this mix is so intensive, I'm actually going to shut it down.